The people who live the longest and stay the strongest on this earth eat almost exactly what God put on the table in the promised land. Olives, fish, bread, greens, figs. No shakes, no macros, no box with a barcode. Just food that came off a stalk, or out of the water, or off a tree. And here is the thing most folks have never once stopped to think about. The man we follow, the man whose feet walked the shore of Galilee, he ate this way every single day of his life. So the question I want to sit with you and answer today is a simple one, and it is a holy one. What did Jesus really eat? Come in, and God bless you. I'm Pastor Robin. For most of my life, I've sat at my people's tables, the wedding suppers, and the funeral lunches both, Bible in one hand and a grocery list in the other. And a while back it struck me, I have preached on the loaves and the fishes 100 times, but I never once asked what was actually on the plate in front of my Lord. So I opened the Gospels and I read them like a menu. I read them the way you'd read a recipe card left behind by your grandmother, looking for what was really on the table. And what I found there is going to change the way you walk down a grocery aisle. Now, before we sit down together, I'm a pastor, not a doctor. So take everything here to your own physician and let them walk it with you. This is God's good food and God's own word, offered simply to encourage you. Nothing on this table is meant to replace a single thing your doctor has you on. Here's the part that ought to make us stop and marvel. There's a reason no company has ever put out a Jesus diet in a shiny package. There is nothing in it to sell you. It is bread and fish and oil and a handful of olives. It came from the ground and the sea, not from a factory. And in our own day, the researchers went looking for the healthiest way of eating on the whole planet. And where did they land? On the very shores where he walked. They call it the Mediterranean diet now. But friend, it is just the table Jesus sat at. The world spent 2,000 years and a great deal of money to circle back to what he already knew. So stay with me. I'm going to walk you food by food through what was actually on his plate, 8 of them, tie each one to the word, and then set you a real supper you can put together this very week for pocket change. Everything I name is at your grocery store right now, and the verse it all rests on is one you know. Your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. 1 Corinthians, chapter 6, verse 19. A temple, not a rental. Let me open it up, and before I name that first food, let me set the scene, so you can picture the table. This was a poor man's world, understand. An ordinary family in Galilee did not have a butcher's counter or a pantry full of boxes. They had grain they ground themselves, a jar of oil, a wineskin, a fig tree in the yard, a garden of greens between the stones, and the sea a short walk off. That was the larder. 2 scholars who studied the meals of that time and place, sifting through the scriptures and the old Jewish writings, and what the archaeologists have dug up, reconstructed what likely sat on the very table of the Last Supper. And it came out to bread and oil, a bean stew, olives, bitter herbs, some fish, and lamb for the feast. Simple, whole, of the earth. Now hold that picture in your mind as we go, because every single thing I name was on that plate for a reason older than any of us. Number 1, bread. And not the soft white loaf in the plastic bag, either. The bread of Galilee, the bread of the poor, was barley bread. Coarse, dark, dense, honest bread. Remember the boy in John chapter 6, the one who brought his little lunch to the hillside. Listen to what the word actually says. Verse 9. There is a lad here, which hath 5 barley loaves, and 2 small fishes. Barley loaves, not fine wheat, that was the food of working people. And Jesus took it in his own hands, blessed it, and fed a multitude with it. And picture how they made it. No bakery, no bag on a shelf. The woman of the house ground her barley by hand between 2 stones, mixed it with water and a bit of leaven, and baked it flat and quick against the wall of a clay oven, or on a hot stone over the coals. It was warm, it was rough, and it was gone by the end of the day, because there was nothing in it to make it keep. That is the mark of real food. It spoils. The box on the shelf that lasts a year is telling you something about itself. Now here is what the world is only now catching up to. That old dark grain is loaded with a soluble fiber, the kind that helps quiet the cholesterol and steady the blood sugar. The bread we eat now, most of it, is stripped so pale and so soft that a body hardly knows what to do with it. Jesus never once ate that. You can find barley in any grocery store, a bag for $2 or $3, and it'll last you a month. Simmer a handful of it soft, the way you'd cook rice, and it goes under a stew, or into a soup, or right alongside your greens. That's your first step back to his table. And I want you to sit with the contrast for just a moment. Walk down the bread aisle today, and you'll find 40 loaves, wrapped in bright plastic, promising you everything, and half of them will outlast you on the shelf. Then picture that dark, plain barley loaf, torn by hand, blessed on a hillside, gone by nightfall. One was made to sell. The other was made to feed. That is the whole difference between the modern aisle and the garden, and once you see it, you cannot unsee it. Number 2. Fish. Broiled fish, to be exact. Now this one is dear to me, because it is the food of the risen Lord. After the resurrection, John chapter 21, the disciples come in off the water, tired and empty-handed, and there on the shore is Jesus. And verse 9 tells us what he'd made. A fire of coals, and fish laid thereon, and bread. He grilled them breakfast on the beach. And a few days before that, in Luke chapter 24, when they could scarcely believe he was real, he asked them plainly for something to eat. And verse 42, they gave him a piece of a broiled fish, and he took it and did eat before them. The Sea of Galilee was full of fish, and it was on his plate constantly. That little sea fed whole towns. The men he called first were fishermen, out on it half the night with their nets. And the catch was tilapia, the one folks still call St. Peter's fish, along with sardines and carp. Much of it was salted and dried so it would keep, and much of it went straight on the coals. Think of that. The Lord chose his closest friends from men who smelled of the lake and the nets, and when he wanted to comfort them, after the worst week of their lives, he did not preach at them first. He made them breakfast. Fish on the fire. That tells you something about how God feels about a shared meal. Now the researchers will tell you that oily fish carries a fat, the omega-3, that is a friend to the heart and to the mind. And they found something particular. When the fish is baked or broiled, the way he had it on those coals, the benefit holds. Fried and battered, not so much. Isn't that something? He showed us the method 2,000 years ago. A can of sardines is about $1.50, and a fillet of tilapia, or a bit of mackerel, is not much more. Lay it under the broiler with a little of the good oil and a squeeze of lemon, a few minutes aside, and there is your supper. That is the Lord's own breakfast for the price of a candy bar. Now stay with me, because the next one is the one most folks have backwards. Number 3. The fruit of the vine. Grapes, and yes, wine. I'll not tiptoe around it. On the night he was betrayed, at the table we call the Last Supper, Matthew chapter 26, he took the bread, and he took the cup, verse 27 and 28. He took the cup, and gave thanks, and gave it to them, saying, Drink ye all of it, for this is my blood of the New Testament. The fruit of the vine was on the holiest table in all of history. Now hear me carefully, and hear me as a pastor. I am not sitting here telling a soul to go start drinking, and if wine is a snare for you, you leave it be. And there is no shame in that, but the grape itself, the skin of it, carries a deep-colored compound that the researchers keep circling back to for the heart. You can get every bit of that from the whole grape, from a handful of dark grapes off the vine, no different than the ones that grew on the hills of Galilee. A bag of grapes is a couple of dollars, and the vineyard was everywhere in that land. The grape was pressed and dried into raisins for the road, eaten fresh off the vine in season, and made into wine that was watered down and drunk with the meal. The way water is drunk here. It was ordinary, and it was daily, and it was received with a blessing. What matters is what Jesus was actually teaching us at that table. Give thanks and receive it as a gift. In the portion he intended. Never the whole vineyard, just the cup, with a grateful heart. Number 4. Olives and the oil that comes from them. Now if there is one food that was the very lifeblood of that land, it was this one. The olive tree. They pressed it in a garden called Gethsemane, and the word itself means the oil press. Think on that. On the night of his deepest sorrow, our Lord knelt to pray in an olive grove. Oil lit their lamps, it anointed the sick, it went on the bread, it was in nearly every meal. And what have the researchers found in these last years? That the real, unrefined oil from that fruit is one of the great gifts to the human heart. It carries compounds that calm the kind of inflammation that wears a body down over the years. God had it growing on the hillsides before there was ever a pharmacy. And picture how they got the oil. They would gather the olives and lay them in a great stone basin and roll a heavy round stone over them, crushing the whole fruit, pit and all, into a thick green mash. Then they would press that mash and let the oil rise. The first pressing, the purest, was the treasured one. That is exactly what we mean today by extra virgin. They knew, 3,000 years ago, that the first cold press was the good one, long before a single study confirmed it. And the studies have. When the researchers pull apart that green unrefined oil, they keep finding the same thing, that it carries compounds that calm inflammation and befriend the heart, and that it is a cornerstone of the very way of eating they now hold up as the healthiest on earth. He had it on his bread. The good extra virgin oil is a few dollars for a bottle that lasts. Here's how I'd take it. A spoonful poured right over your greens or your bread, cold. The way they did it. Not the pale stripped-down oils the box makers push. The green, cloudy, honest oil off the press. I'll be honest with you now. And I promised you I would. For years I had this exact thing backwards. I bought the cheapest yellow oil on the shelf and thought oil was oil. I did not know there was a difference. And when a good friend, a man who'd grown up around groves, set me straight and let me taste the real thing poured over warm bread, I understood for the first time what Gethsemane smelled like. I'll not promise you the moon, but I'll tell you that small change was one of the easiest good things I ever did for the temple God gave me. Number 5. Lentils and beans. The humble pottage. You remember, all the way back in Genesis, Esau sold his birthright for a bowl of it, a bowl of lentil stew. This was the everyday protein of the poor, the pot that sat on the fire in every ordinary home from morning till the family came in at dusk. It was cheap, it was filling, and it stretched to feed whoever came to the door. And the archaeologists who studied that Last Supper table tell us a bean stew was likely right there among the dishes. Now the researchers will tell you plainly that these little seeds are packed with fiber and with a plant protein that is a real friend to the gut and to steady blood sugar. A bag of dried lentils is $1 or $2, and it will feed a family for days. This is the food that carried whole generations of God's people through hard years and lean winters, and it asked almost nothing of them but a pot and a little patience. And it never once came out of a box. It came out of the ground, dried in the sun, and dropped in the pot. An onion, a clove of garlic, a spoon of that good oil, and you have the very stew that simmered in the homes of Galilee. Number 6. The bitter herbs and the greens. Now this one folks pass right over, but it sat on the holiest tables of all. At the Passover, the Lord's own supper, the meal was eaten with bitter herbs. The word lays it out in Numbers chapter 9, verse 11. They shall eat it with unleavened bread and bitter herbs. Those were the wild greens of the field, sharp and green and alive. And the leafy greens of that land, the wild things that grew up between the stones, were part of daily bread for ordinary people. We have gotten so far from this. We have turned the plate over to soft, sweet, pale things. But the greens, they carry the very stuff a body is built to run on. Picture the modern aisle again, all that bright packaging in the middle of the store, and then the plain bunch of dark greens off in the corner that nobody reaches for. The garden is still there, it's just gone quiet. And here is where the old table and the new science shake hands again. That way of eating, heavy on the greens and the beans and the grain and the oil, light on the meat, is precisely the pattern the researchers now credit for longer years and a stronger heart and a clearer mind in old age. They did not invent it. They found it. They found it right there on the hills, where he walked. In the food of the poor, the food he blessed and broke. A bunch of greens is $1 or $2. Wilt them in a little of that good olive oil. That is a Passover plate. Now stay with me, because we're nearly to your supper, and I've saved 2 of the sweetest for last. Number 7. The lamb. Once a year, at the Passover, meat came to the center of the table, and it was lamb. Everyday folk in Galilee did not eat meat often. Mind you, it was for the feast, for the holy day. But the Passover lamb, that is woven through the whole story of our faith, from Egypt to the cross, and there is a wisdom in that we have lost. Meat was the exception, not the rule. It was for the feast day. The rest of the year it was bread and fish, and lentils and greens and oil. We have flipped that clean around, put the meat at the center of every single supper, and the plants off to the side, as an afterthought. His table had it the other way, plants most days, lamb for the feast, and there is even a mercy in the leanness of it, when you think on it. Meat kept for the holy day meant the holy day stayed holy. The feast still felt like a feast, because it was not every night. We have made every night a feast, and in doing so, we have made no night a feast at all. His people ate simply 6 days and richly on the 7th, and the rhythm of it, the fast and the feast together, is its own kind of wisdom the body was made for, and a lamb roasted simple, for a holy meal, shared around a full table. There is nothing wrong with that. It is the everyday habit we've got backwards. And number 8, with a gentle touch, because I don't want to send you into the sweets. Honey and figs. The land itself was called a land flowing with milk and honey, and the fig tree shows up all through the Gospels. These were the sweetness of that world. Not the sugar poured into everything on the shelf now, but the honey from the comb and the fig off the branch, whole, with all its fiber wrapped around it, the way God made it. When your sweet tooth calls, and it will, a couple of dried figs or a small spoon of real honey is the answer his table would hand you. A little, not a lot. Sweetness as a gift, not a habit. There is a wisdom in that, when you think on it. The sweetest thing on his table was still a whole food, a fig you could hold, an honest spoon of honey off the comb, and it came wrapped in fiber and slow-fed the body the way God intended. The trouble with our aisles is not that they are sweet. It is that the sweetness has been stripped bare and poured into everything, morning to night. His table saved it for the end, and small. Now, I want to bring this home to somebody's kitchen. Years back, there was a woman in a parish of mine, I'll call her Doris, a widow who lived alone and had gotten to where she was eating whatever came in a package, because cooking for one felt like a burden. And we got to talking about all of this over a cup of tea, and she started small. A bag of lentils, a bottle of the good oil, a bunch of greens, grapes instead of the cookies, and I'll not tell you it worked a miracle, because that's not mine to promise, but I watched a little light come back into that woman. She told me her kitchen felt like a kitchen again. She was setting a table the way her own mother had. That is what this is, not a diet, a homecoming, and I've seen it in more kitchens than hers over the years. It is never about doing everything at once. It is one honest food set back on the table, and then another, until a body remembers what it was made to run on, because your body is a temple of the Holy Spirit. 1 Corinthians 6:19, a temple. And you would not stock the house of God with junk and empty boxes. You'd fill it with good and honest things. That is all we are doing here. So let me set your supper. Here is how you eat the way Jesus ate this week, and I'll wager it comes to less than what you're spending now. Start with a piece of dark barley or whole grain bread, a couple of dollars for the loaf. Pour that good green olive oil right over it, cold. A bottle for $5 or $6 that will last you weeks. Set out a bowl of lentils, simmered soft with an onion and a clove of garlic. A bag of the dried lentils for $1 or $2, and it feeds you all week. A little broiled fish, a can of sardines for $1.50 if money's tight. That's fine. The Lord ate simple too, or a fillet of tilapia under the broiler for a few dollars more. A handful of dark greens wilted in that same oil, $1 or $2 for the bunch. A small handful of grapes or a couple of dried figs to finish. Sweetness the way his table gave it. Bread, fish, oil, lentils, greens, fruit. Added up, and the whole of it, enough for several suppers, comes to less than a single one of those trays you'd carry out of the freezer aisle. That, friend, is the plate the man from Galilee sat down to, for a handful of dollars, in any grocery store in the country. No package required. And I'd wager it will taste more like a real supper than anything that ever came out of a box. So take care of the temple he gave you. Eat the food he made, in the portion he intended, with a grateful heart. Breathe. God is here. And remember, God set the first table in a garden, and he is still setting one for you. Go and eat in good health, and God keep you. I'm Pastor Robin.